Building an aquarium can often seem intimidating, so let's break it down into some simple steps today. I begin by finding the internal dimensions of the aquarium. Once I have these measurements, I use them to build the filter inside of the tank. To do this, I use expanded PVC board that I then cut to size with a utility blade. I use a square for all of my measurements to help reduce waste, both in time and material. To make the cutting process the easiest, make sure that you have a fresh blade and you keep even, firm pressure throughout the entirety of the movement. After trying it out for the first time, I realized I had to make some minor adjustments so that it would fit properly. Next, I take measurements for the USB pump that will be going inside of the filter. Next, I use the square to mark out where the filter compartment will be. I then begin creating the separator that will go in between the two different filter compartments. I cut it about an inch shorter than the rest of the materials to ensure proper water flow between compartments. Cutting it to the proper width will ensure that I have maximum room for different hardscaping plants in the aquarium. To assemble, I use 100% silicone. This all but guarantees you have a solid structure. I then press it down firmly, trying to create a 90-degree angle. Next, I had to make some modifications to the filter outlet. I cut off one end of the T, then plugged it with silicone for a watertight seal. After that, I use a drill bit that's slightly smaller than the elbow to create the outflow in the filter compartment. I then test fitted the elbow and realized the hole was too small. Enlarging the hole was boring and led to fantastic results. I then marked out where I wanted the intake for the filter. After cutting out the overflow box, I secured plastic mesh. This mesh removes any larger particles that would either clog the filter or cause harm to the pump. After giving the silicone time to set, I then began assembling it inside of the aquarium. Using firm pressure to ensure the silicone holds, I make sure that the compartments are as square as possible. I then tape up the inside of the aquarium before applying the silicone. I am always generous with the silicone because it is easier to take it away than it is to add more. Next, I use my finger to smooth and clean the seams. I then remove the tape before the silicone has been given a chance to cure. After giving the silicone time to set, I then apply tape so that I can paint the aquarium. With the first layer of paint, my main goal is to get as much paint as evenly spread across the aquarium as possible. It usually takes about 5 or 6 coats to complete, and to check whether or not it's completed, I hold it up to a light to see if there are any gaps in the paint. I let the paint dry for a few hours and remove the tape slowly to prevent any peeling. I then use foam scraps as the different templates for the filter compartments. I then connect the elbow to the hose and do a dry fit for an estimation of the hose length. As per usual, estimations were slightly off, and I had to make some adjustments for it to fit properly. Once the pump was assembled and properly fit, it was time for the first test fill. After ensuring everything was working as planned, it was time to begin the scaping. For the base layer of fertilization, I added in about 5 broken down root tabs and then started to fill with some larger grain aquarium gravel. Next, I used a sand flattener to ensure nothing would be visible through the decorative layer of substrate. I began placing the decorative sand in the aquarium by creating a barrier between the glass and the fertilization layer. I then added more sand to cap off all of the remaining nutrients in the substrate layers. I decided to use lava stone for this scape because it is very easy to work with and porous, which will aid in filtration. I wanted the hardscape up against the filter compartment so I could use that area to create height for the background plants. I then removed the rocks so I could create more height in the foreground without burying the details. After replacing the hardscape in the tank, I then added aquarium gravel in the background to create height for the plants, making sure to work it into the crevices and adding more sand to cap everything off. Then, I make sure the sand is even before I begin planting. For this aquarium, I'll only be using 3 plants: Crypt Wendetii, Anubias nonapetite, and Cryptocorum parva. Beginning with the Anubias, use a dab of super glue and attach the rhizome to the rock, following the natural crevices and lines that are formed. It typically takes about 10 to 15 seconds of firm pressure to ensure your Anubias will be going nowhere. Next, I planted the foreground, which is entirely composed of Cryptocorum parva. This is a very slow-growing foreground plant, but will hardly require any maintenance to keep looking nice. Next, Next, for the background, I use a mixture of different crypticorn wind dead eyes. The different colors will create a beautiful jungle look in time. Finally, I use a Nubius Nana and a Nubius Nana Golden to fill up the remaining space. Adding in the pump is the final step before moving it to its home. Always fill the tank slowly, keeping something in between the sand and the water flow to prevent disruption. Next, I do a 50% water change to remove the fine debris that creates cloudiness in new aquariums. Finally, I added in the first stocking, 3 ram's horn snails. And there we have it. In the coming weeks, plants should start putting out new leaves, everything should start thickening up, and it'll start looking even better than it does now. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I will see everybody in the next one.